All right, let's get right into it. Today we're wading into some deep water, talking about something that's incredibly personal and honestly really tough. What do you do when you believe in God, but in your moment of deepest suffering, there's just silence?
This question, it just hits you, right? It's not some abstract theological puzzle. It's a gut punch. This is a real cry from someone who's been praying for a little bit of hope and just keeps getting hit with more hardship. That feeling that you're being hated by a God who's supposed to be all about love, that's the exact emotional space we're going to explore today.
So how do we even begin to navigate this? Well, we've got a roadmap. We're going to start by really naming the struggle. Then we'll look at a couple of totally different ways of thinking about God's power. After that, we'll check out a more radical approach, and then we'll finish up by talking about how you actually live with the question itself.
First things first, let's put a name to this feeling, because if you've ever felt this way, you need to know you are not alone, not by a long shot. This is one of the oldest, most profound struggles in human history, and it actually has a formal name in philosophy.
It's called the problem of evil. And it gets right to the core of it, right? If God is good and God can do anything, then why is there so much pain in the world? It feels like a contradiction. The material we're digging into today lays out a few different frameworks. You can think of them like different maps that people have used to try and make sense of this.
So let's start with the first set of maps. These are the ones that begin with the idea that God is absolutely 100% in control of everything.
This is the classic view. It's called classical theism. The argument here is that God isn't the one directly causing your pain. The suffering we experience is a tragic consequence of living in a fallen or broken world, a world where we have free will. In this view, God's love isn't really about stopping every bad thing from happening. It's about a much bigger, long-term plan of redemption. So the central idea is a really tough one. It's a call to trust in a divine mystery that we just might not be able to understand from our limited perspective.
You know, for some people, that can feel a little cold, a little distant. So let's pivot to a more personal idea. What if that feeling of abandonment isn't what it seems? What if God isn't actually gone at all? What if God is just hidden? This leads us to this really powerful concept from mystical traditions called the dark night of the soul. And what's so wild about this idea is how it completely reframes that divine silence. It suggests that when God feels absent, it's actually part of a really difficult but ultimately transformative spiritual process. The idea is that all the easy, superficial parts of your faith get stripped away, leaving you to build something much deeper, much more real. The hardship isn't a punishment, it's a process of refining your soul.
Okay, but what if the whole problem starts with our assumption that God is this all-controlling micromanager? This next set of maps asks us to totally reimagine what divine power even looks like.
And it really boils down to this distinction: coercive power versus persuasive power. Is God the kind of being who forces things to happen, who overrides free will whenever he wants? Or is God a being whose power works more like a powerful influence, a persuasive force, who works with us and within the laws of the universe, respecting our freedom? That difference is everything for the next two perspectives.
So first, you've got something called process theology. This framework says God's power is persuasive, not coercive. He can't just snap his fingers and stop a tragedy because he doesn't micromanage the world like that. And this is the part that gets me. In this view, God isn't distant or detached. He's right there with us, actually grieving with us in our pain. God's love isn't shown by preventing all suffering, but by being an unwavering presence that walks us through it. And that lines up beautifully with many Jewish theological traditions. There's this incredible concept of Tikkun Olam, which means repairing the world. The idea is that humans are God's partners in this work. God doesn't just fix everything for us. In fact, he invites us to argue with him, to wrestle with him, to be brutally honest in our prayers, yelling at God, being angry at God. From this perspective, that's not a failure of faith. It's proof that you're still in the relationship.
Okay, so let's just quickly put these side by side. You've got classical theism and all-powerful God, where suffering is a tragic byproduct of a broken world. Then you've got process theology, a God with persuasive power who suffers right there with us. And finally, Jewish Theodicy, which emphasizes a partnership where we're called to lament and help repair the world. Three very different maps for the same incredibly difficult terrain.
But what happens when none of these logical maps feel right? What happens when your pain is so chaotic and senseless that no explanation seems to fit? Well, our source material points to one more path, one that basically says sometimes reason has to take a back seat. This is an idea that comes to us from the philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, and he argued that real faith isn't about having a neat and tidy system that answers every question. For him, faith is a passionate, personal commitment, a leap of faith, he called it, that you make precisely when things don't make sense. It's about choosing to trust in God's love even when all the evidence around you seems to scream the opposite.
So, we've got the all-powerful God, the partnering God, the radical leap of faith. We have all these frameworks, but how does any of this actually help a person who is hurting right now? For this last part, let's move away from the big theories and get practical.
The source material offers some really simple human steps. First, let the anger out. Be honest, yell, scream, write it down, whatever it takes. Second, find community. You cannot do this alone. Connect with other people who get it. Third, maybe rethink what prayer looks like. If words don't work, just try silence. Light a candle. Simply sit and say, I'm here. And finally, dig into the work of others who have wrestled with this. People have been in that same dark place.
And really, if there's one core message to take away from all of this, it's a message of validation. Your pain is real. It's not something to be explained away. And your questions, your anger, your doubt, those are not signs of a weak faith. They are signs of a heart that is alive, a heart that is searching, and a heart that is refusing to accept easy answers.
And so we land here with this final thought. Maybe the goal isn't to find the perfect answer to the question, why? Maybe the most powerful shift we can make is to move from seeking an explanation for the past to finding a path for the future. So instead of asking, why is this happening, maybe we can start to ask, okay, what now?